In the early 1960s, a city learned to fear its own front doors. For 18 months, a phantom moved through the neighborhoods of Boston. He entered homes not with a crash, but with a convincing lie or a friendly ruse. Inside, he committed acts of such intimate horror that they shattered the city's sense of security. 13 women, from teenagers to grandmothers, were found sexually assaulted and strangled, often with the very items that symbolized their domestic lives: a stocking or a bathrobe belt. The press, in a desperate attempt to name the terror, coined a moniker that would echo through history: the Boston Strangler. The police chased a ghost, and a metropolis held its breath. Then, from behind bars, a man stepped forward, offering a confession so detailed, it seemed to solve everything. His name was Albert DeSalvo. He knew things only the killer could know. But here is where the story twists, and the true mystery begins. A confession, no matter how compelling, is just a story. And for decades, that's all it was. No fingerprint, no strand of hair, no piece of undeniable evidence tied him to those murder scenes. He was convicted, yes, but for other crimes. He was imprisoned, yes, but died in a stabbing that remains officially unsolved. He claimed to be the monster, yet the monster's shadow never quite fit his shape. This left a haunting, unresolved question hanging over history. If Albert DeSalvo was telling the truth, he was one of America's most prolific serial killers. If he was lying, then a brazen imposter had stolen the identity of a phantom, and the real Boston Strangler might have never been caught. To understand the man at the center of this riddle, we must go back to the beginning, to the forge where his life was shaped. Albert Henry DeSalvo was born in 1931, in Chelsea, Massachusetts, into a house that was not a home, but a prison of violence. His father, Frank, was a brutal alcoholic. The abuse he inflicted on Albert's mother, Charlotte, was savage and performative, done in front of the children. He knocked out her teeth. He bent her fingers back until they broke. But the violence wasn't just physical. Frank DeSalvo also warped the very concept of intimacy. He would bring prostitutes into the family home, engaging in sexual acts in front of his wife and children. For a young boy, the lessons were catastrophic and fused together. Violence equals control, and sex is intertwined with humiliation, power, and brutality. The damage manifested quickly. Albert began torturing animals. By the age of 12, he was arrested for battery and robbery, and sent to a reform school. His adolescence was a cycle of petty crime, institutionalization, and escalating trouble. In a search for the structure his home never provided, he joined the U.S. Army, where he surprisingly thrived, serving as a military policeman and receiving honorable discharges. By the early 1960s, he presented an ordinary facade. A married father of 2, living in a modest house in Malden, working as a handyman. To his neighbors, he was unremarkable. But this normalcy was a thin veneer. Beneath it, the traumatized boy from Chelsea was actively constructing a secret, predatory life. While the Strangler dominated headlines, Boston police were also hunting another man. Since 1962, a predator they called the Green Man, or Measuring Man, had been committing a series of rapes. His method was distinctive, almost a grotesque parody of politeness. Posing as a model agency scout or a detective, he would gain entry into a woman's apartment, tie her up, assault her, and then, chillingly, often apologize before leaving. In October 1964, a victim in Cambridge gave a description so precise, it led detectives directly to Albert DeSalvo. When his photo was published, more identifications flooded in. The Green Man was in custody. But at this moment, He was not a suspect for the larger, more terrifying Strangler murders. That connection would come from inside the walls of the Bridgewater State Hospital. There, DeSalvo shared a cell with George Nasser, a cunning man serving time for murder. To Nasser, DeSalvo began to confess. He claimed he was the Boston Strangler. Nasser saw an opportunity and told his attorney, the brilliant and flamboyant defense lawyer F. Lee Bailey. Bailey took over DeSalvo's defense, and what followed was a legal spectacle. Under hypnosis, and in marathon interviews, DeSalvo provided confessions of stunning granularity. He described how victims were posed, the specific knots used, odd details inside apartments, information meticulously withheld from the public. For investigators, it was a revelation that bordered on closure. They had their man. But the law demands more than a story, no matter how convincing. A yawning chasm remained. Physical evidence. Despite exhaustive searches, no forensic evidence. No fingerprints, no hairs, no fibers from the 13 murder scenes could be conclusively matched to Albert DeSalvo. Faced with this evidentiary void, the state could not prosecute DeSalvo for the 13 murders that had terrorized Boston. They prosecuted him for the crimes they could prove, the series of Green Man assaults. In 1967, a complex plea bargain was struck. DeSalvo pled guilty to avoid the electric chair, and was sentenced to life in prison. His lawyer, F. Lee Bailey, had hoped DeSalvo would be committed to a psychiatric institution for study, a living case study into the mind of a serial killer. The court rejected this, sentencing him to life without parole at the maximum security Walpole State Prison. A frustrated Bailey later lamented that society had locked away a specimen, instead of studying it, losing a chance to understand the genesis of such violence. Behind bars, the narrative DeSalvo had spun began to fray. He staged a brief, strange escape. More importantly, he began to recant his confession. The man who once provided a roadmap to hell now claimed he hadn't walked the path. The definitive answer was shrouded in his own contradictions. Then, on November 25, 1973, Albert DeSalvo was found stabbed to death in the prison infirmary. Another inmate was tried for the murder, but the trial ended in a hung jury. The man who claimed to be the Boston Strangler was gone, taking his disputed truth to a grave that seemed to be the final period on the story. But some stories refused to end. For nearly 40 years, the case festered as a dark legend. Authors and forensic experts pointed out perplexing inconsistencies. The victims were wildly different in age, social class, and ethnicity. The methods seemed to vary. Could one man's violent signature be so inconsistent? The family of Mary Sullivan, the Strangler's final 19-year-old victim, became relentless advocates for the truth. Her nephew, author Casey Sherman, believed DeSalvo was innocent. Their fight led to exhumations and tests, but early results were muddled. Then, in 2013, forensic science finally delivered the clue that had eluded detectives for half a century. Advanced DNA techniques, capable of analyzing degraded, decades-old evidence, were applied to the crime scene from Mary Sullivan's apartment. Investigators found a familial match. The male DNA profile pointed like an arrow to the DeSalvo family line. Acting on this, authorities exhumed Albert DeSalvo's body one final time. The result was unambiguous. In July 2013, the Suffolk County District Attorney announced that the DNA from the seminal fluid recovered from Mary Sullivan was a perfect match to Albert DeSalvo. Science had spoken with a clarity the law never could. Albert DeSalvo sexually assaulted and murdered Mary Sullivan. Yet, in a case defined by paradox, even this definitive proof did not slam the book shut. It bookmarked a single terrible page. If DeSalvo killed Mary Sullivan, did he kill the other 12 women? Former FBI profiler Robert Ressler, an expert in behavioral analysis, found the variations hard to reconcile, stating it was inconceivable behaviorally that all the crimes fit one individual. Suspicion also fell on DeSalvo's cellmate, George Nassar. Some, like prison psychiatrist Dr. Ames Roby, believed Nassar, a diagnosed psychopathic killer, was the true strangler. The theory suggested Nassar fed crime scene details to DeSalvo, who then confessed. DeSalvo, facing life for the Green Man rapes anyway, may have done it for a share of reward money, or for the perverse, lasting notoriety of being synonymous with Boston's greatest terror. In this light, his confession was not an admission, but the final grand act of a pathological personality, a man who so badly wanted to be infamous that he was willing to become a monster by proxy. This brings us to the profound, unsettling question at the heart of not just this case, but every story of serial murder. Why? What forges a human being into a predator? The life of Albert DeSalvo presents a stark map of potential causes. We see the overwhelming argument for nurture, the product of a toxic environment, a childhood steeped in extreme violence and sexual deviance, that normalized the abnormal. This is the broken foundation. But as experts like criminologist Dr. Scott Bonn explain, trauma alone is not enough. Thousands of people have had horrible childhoods, notes forensic psychologist Dr. Louis Schlesinger. They don't go around killing people in a series. This points to the nature argument, a pre-existing neurobiological component. Some individuals may be born with a predisposition, a brain where the wiring for empathy is faulty, where impulse control is diminished, or where sexual arousal becomes tragically linked to aggression and dominance. Think of it as a psychological fault line. The prevailing understanding today is a toxic interaction of both. It is the perfect storm Dr. Bond describes. A child may be born with a vulnerable neurobiology, the fault line. That child is then placed on the seismic ground of horrific sustained trauma, the earthquake. The environment doesn't create the fault line, but it guarantees a catastrophic rupture. For Albert DeSalvo, the storm may have brewed like this: a possible born predisposition, perhaps the psychopath's lack of impulse control and empathy, was ignited by the hellish environment of his father's house, where violence was love and sex was power. This fused into a compulsive need for control over women, first expressed in the binding, assaulting, and apologizing pattern of the Green Man, a rehearsed script of dominance and faux remorse. That need, escalating and fueled by a sexuality warped beyond recognition, may have ultimately expressed itself in the final, absolute control of the Strangler, the taking of a life. So, who was Albert DeSalvo? The legal system found him to be a violent serial rapist. Modern science proves he was a murderer. His own words claimed he was a historic monster. His death remains an unsolved killing. His story is not a simple parable of crime and punishment. It is a more complex and haunting tale about the search for truth itself. A truth pursued through manhunts and confessions, through legal strategy and plea bargains, and finally, through the silent binary language of DNA. It is a story that forces us to confront the uncomfortable idea that monsters are not born in vacuums or emerge from shadows fully formed. They are forged piece by tragic piece in the hidden places of our society. In brutal homes, in lonely, twisted minds, in the catastrophic meeting of a broken psyche and a breaking world. The Boston Strangler case is officially closed. But its echoes remain. The echo of a city's fear, the echo of evidentiary doubt, and the most chilling echo of all, the quiet, relentless question of what twists the human soul into something that can look at another person and see not a life, but an object for fulfillment, a stepping stone to fame, or simply a vessel for exercising a deep, ingrained, and terrifying need for control. These devastating histories, woven with pain and loss, serve as a tragic reminder of the foundational role of the home. While no single factor creates a predator, studies consistently trace the roots of violent behavior, including that of many serial offenders, to severe childhood trauma, abuse, and a critical lack of secure ethical guidance. Parents hold a profound responsibility to cultivate patience, nurture empathy, and maintain a home built on stability and consistent moral values. This environment is the primary shield against the emotional deficits and warped worldviews that can fester in a young mind. By fostering respect and kindness from the earliest age, we do not just raise happier children, we help build a safer society, breaking the cycles of violence that begin, so often, in the silence of a broken home.